Welcome, everybody. So for all of you who are here just to know how to quit Vim, that's how to do it. You have to press escape first. Like all of the other tutorials, forget that part. So it's really important to hit escape first. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So :Q says quit, A for all buffers, and exclamation mark for forget what I wrote because I didn't know what I wanted to write. So that's basically, if that was your question, you are free to go now. Okay, so who am I? I'm Damian. I do Flutter trainings, onboardings, and also freelance work. So this is my background. I'm based in Hamburg in Germany. And yeah, if you want to reach out, feel free to talk to me afterwards. 2 years ago, I switched to using Vim as my only IDE for developing with Flutter. And I got a lot of questions if that's even possible. And yeah, it is possible. That's why I'm giving the talk today, because I've been using it for 2 years. And no, I've not been using it for 2 years because I don't know how to quit Vim. This is a very old meme, and I interposed another meme in there because it fits. Like, there's, on the one hand side, yes, Vim is very difficult to learn at first. So the learning curve is like, you either know how to use Vim or not, kind of. It's not really true, but it feels sometimes like it is. And yeah, so basically, this is not how I got stuck in Vim. A quick disclaimer, I'm not your average Vim user, so I will not try to convince you to convert to Vim. And I'm probably also not the best Vim user. I just know how to use Vim for the things I want to do, and it works for my workflow pretty well. So I can try to answer your questions, but maybe I'm not the 100% expert you perceive me to be because I'm using Vim as my daily driver, just as a disclaimer up front. So what exactly is Vim? Vim is VI improved, like a very basic text editor which was on one line only, then got improved to have multiple lines and lots of more features, but basically it's just for editing text. So it's purely for editing text, like nothing like IDE support, like refactoring and all of that. That's not part of Vim itself. That's something we need to add to it later on. So yeah, Vim basically is a Unix tool, and if you're ever SSHing into some server, this is something you have available always, and it's nice to know how to use it because that's usually installed. But what is Vim to me? Because I think this talk is mostly about what Vim is to me and not what Vim can do for anybody, but how I use it and how it fits into my work, in my day-to-day work. So I like to think of Vim as part of my brain-computer interface. So if we think about how we develop or how we are basically working every day, we are perceiving our code through our eyes on a two-dimensional screen. Maybe we have multiple screens. But we also need to type out stuff, or we need to bring our thoughts back into the computer. And one part of that is our hands. So we need to have some kind of interface device to bring our thoughts back into the computer. And one part is basically knowing how to type. Knowing how to type fast is sometimes better because you don't lose your train of thought. It's not about that you're a better developer if you can type faster. It's just and also, if you don't have keycaps, you don't look onto your keyboard anymore. So my keycaps are blank, and that's for the reason that then my brain can't say, okay, let's take a look at the keyboard and see which button I want to press. I need to memorize it, and our brain is capable of that. And if we force it to do that, it's much easier. So a lot of my toolings are built around the idea that I want to force myself to, my unconscious self, basically, to perform a little bit better. And blank keycaps and Vim are basically the same thing, just on two different sides of this human-computer interface. And looking into what Vim then is for me, it's basically after I typed out my thoughts, Vim allows me to edit my thoughts again and navigate inside of my thoughts. And I also like to use Vim for note keeping and all of that because it is part of my thinking process. When I type stuff, then I want to be able to edit it. I want to be able to select words and do operations on it like I'm used to doing in Vim. It's a little bit weird, but that's just how my thinking evolved over the last 2 years when I started using Vim. So the question is now then, why did I start using Vim? And the answer is quite easy. I would love to slay dragons for a living, but I'm stuck as a software developer. And yeah, I had a friend who was using Vim already for multiple years. And yeah, I asked him, can you give me your dot files and teach me how to use Vim? And then he said, oh, yes, I can. And he gave me his dot files, and I didn't set up my Vim config from scratch. I used to do Arch Linux back then. I am not that masochistic anymore. So yeah, I was really glad that I had like a completely working setup which was used in production by somebody else. So yeah, that's one thing. But the real reason is my IntelliJ license expired and I would have had to renew it. And yeah, so I basically asked, okay, now is the time, like I've got 2 months and yeah, so I decided to give it a try and I never looked back. Like really, in the 2 years, I think it's now 2 years that I've been using Vim, I only opened the IDEs for like configuration stuff, starting simulators, configuring emulators, stuff like that, not for anything else. Like for no refactoring, for nothing. And I'm very fortunate that that worked out that way. I would have been open to switching back to other IDEs, and if I'm thinking about it loud, yes, I've been using VS Code in my trainings, but not for my development work. Like when I do trainings, I sometimes use other IDEs to showcase how that works. But I also like to use Vim because it's like so basic that everybody can say, okay, if it works in Vim, it should work in IntelliJ or VS Code. So yeah. And many of the modern IDEs like VS Code, IntelliJ, Android Studio, they're really great like at refactoring. They have great support. They have their own refactoring systems and everything built in. They're also great at debugging, and they have like all the smart breakpoints and capturing of breakpoints and all of that, and like hundreds more features which we are probably all not using. But they're there. But basically, what are we doing as software developers? And this is a guess, but I think most of the time we are just reading stuff. Like we are either reading our own code, other code, or we are going into the framework and trying to figure out how that works. We are doing code reviews, we are looking at other people's code. Again, that's all reading time, like not in value, but more like time spent is probably somewhere along those lines. Maybe it's not 90%, maybe it's a little bit less, but I think those numbers are pretty accurate. And when we look at reading, then it's really important to be able to navigate quickly. It's important to be able to select stuff and highlight stuff. And since we are all using Copilot today, deleting stuff. Like that's basically what we are doing all the time. It's like navigating, selecting, and deleting. The writing part is also important, but that's not as important as navigating and selecting. And refactoring, of course, is nice, but how often do we do refactorings during the day? Like, yes, we are using highlighting stuff or surround with widget and all of that, but how often are we really doing package-wide or app-wide refactoring where we are pulling something out and moving it into a new file? Probably not even daily. Maybe daily, but probably not, depending on how you start your development workflow from the beginning. Maybe you're even thinking about this ahead of time and putting it into the right file from the beginning instead of pulling it out. Not saying that you can't refactor with Vim, but just saying that this is one of the things, yeah. So yeah, with Copilot's rise, it's like deleting closing brackets. Who of you has the problem of deleting the additional closing brackets of Copilot? The rest is not using Copilot, right? Who is using Copilot? Yeah, okay, so the rest is just not using Copilot. So this is a very common problem because Copilot tries to complete like the whole widget, and then it adds all of the closing brackets, even if you're already in the tree and you have your closing brackets. So and that's something IDEs are not good at because they are not meant to edit text. And this now is a purely text editing task to remove single brackets, single commata. So this is something where coincidentally Vim shines, which I didn't think about before because Copilot support to Vim, or I think even Copilot, came around later than I started using Vim. So Vim for IDEs is similar to inherited widgets for state management. You don't have to use them. There are better solutions or more convenient solutions around. But if you know how to use them, it gives you the option to use them at all, like to understand what they are doing. Who of you has used Provider so far? So most people have used Provider. Who has used inherited widget? Okay, also a lot of people. Who knows what a proxy widget is? Okay, kind of two people. So the inherited widget extends proxy widget. But you didn't know that even though you used inherited widget, and many people raised their hands for inherited widget. So you don't even need to know all the basic stuff. But if you know, then sometimes it helps you in debugging to find where something should break. Like you don't even need to run your debugger because you already have a mental image of what happens inside of the code. It's very similar to editing. Like for me, when I think about refactoring stuff, I sometimes think about it ahead of time because Vim is not as powerful as IntelliJ or as powerful as VS Code with some plugins. Maybe it can be, but for me, I have not configured it in the same way. So it forces me to think ahead of time sometimes. Okay, so let's get nerdy and get into a few of the lessons I've learned over the past 2 years using Vim as my daily driver. So the very, very first lesson is know your shortcuts. And the question is, how many shortcuts or actions are we actually using in our day-to-day development work? Do you have a guess how many you're using? Who of you is using more than, let's say, 30 different commands in the IDE? One person? Okay. Okay. Who of you is using, let's say, more than 20 different commands in the IDE? More than 10? Yeah. More than 5? Okay. Okay. So for me, it was, I had the very fortunate situation that the friend who gave me his config, I could just ask him about all of the questions I had whenever I started Vim up. And I didn't know which shortcuts I was using, and I didn't know which features I was actually using in IntelliJ before. So I made the switch from IntelliJ to Vim, yeah. So, and then I had the sheet laying there, and I wrote down all of the actions which I wanted to do, and because we were on Slack and we were on the same team, he had a very quick response time that was pretty nice for me. So I could just fill up my cheat sheet on the go, and I didn't need to figure out upfront which shortcuts I was using, or not even shortcuts, because IntelliJ has lots of menus where you can click on stuff, similar to VS Code. You click on a lot of stuff, and you only notice on what you click when you are in Vim, and you can't click into any menu, because there just is no menu. You just need to figure out, are there any key bindings already, or if not, how do I get the functionality into Vim? Because as I said earlier, Vim does not bring any programming functionality out of the box. Everything needs to be added to Vim. So keeping that in mind, like this might seem in the end like a cohesive IDE, but in fact it's just a lot of small plugins which are glued together. So lesson 2, build or buy. There's not a widget, but a plugin for everything. Like even commenting out and uncommenting stuff is its own plugin. Searching is its own plugin. There are so many plugins. I'm going through a few of the things which I've been using so far. So COC Flutter is the equivalent of the VS Code Flutter plugin or of the IntelliJ Flutter plugin. Because out of the box, both of those IDEs also don't support Flutter. You need to install a plugin for that. And in that way, Vim is very similar to that. Also, I'm using NVim and not Vim, and just as a side note, so it's a modernized version where you can easily add new plugins to it, and there's even a whole slew of different plugin managers, and there's so much going on, and COC Flutter is just one solution, one which you can use to more easily write Flutter code. And you get stuff like syntax highlighting, and that's pretty nice, right? That's something you would like to have. But you also get all of the quick actions. So that's something you don't have to miss, basically. Like, many people even don't use those in their big IDEs, but this is really powerful to have that, and also to have it completely on shortcuts, that it's really easy to open and then execute shortcuts. And I'm using fix all so much, it's really, it fixes everything. It's like really amazing. But not only code actions, like linter warnings, and jumping directly to the line where the warning happens. That's also available in Vim. Also, it's available because the Dart language server exposes all of that. And that's the reason why all of the IDEs are pretty much the same. So it doesn't really matter if you're using Vim, IntelliJ, VS Code. They all have the same core. IntelliJ has some of their own refactorings. But to be honest, I didn't miss any of them. And I wouldn't even know which are the refactorings from IntelliJ. So I don't know. For me, it just worked out that I didn't miss anything in the switch. Yeah, then there is file stuff. We always need to manipulate files and navigate around and figure out where we are and go into the Android and iOS folder and do stuff. Sometimes we don't know what the files are called, so we can't search for them, so we need to look for them manually. You wouldn't need that if you were like a true power user, but it's still nice to have, right? And also what's nice, it has mouse support, so I can click on anything. And I'm using that. I'm not a 100% hardcore Vim user. I'm using the mouse a lot. I'm using the scroll pad a lot because sometimes I just want to relax, lay back, and scroll through code. And I don't want to have my fingers on the keys and be like crammed up and pushing buttons and stuff like that. So the demo which we saw yesterday morning, where Todd opened a Flutter app in the terminal that also had mouse gestures. So all of that is available. Like in almost all terminal emulators, you can capture all of the mouse clicks and all of the mouse gestures. So in the end, it's just an either-or decision. Yeah, going further, like fuzzy find files. You're probably saying, okay, but in VS Code, I can so quickly find files, or in IntelliJ, I can so quickly open this or that. We have the same in Vim. It's very easy to find files. You have fuzzy find. You can search inside of files using AG, the Silver Surfer. It's a very powerful command line tool, and it's just piped back into Vim. So I like to use AG even if I'm just searching for stuff. I'm going into my terminal and use AG to search stuff or to do a global search replace. Yeah, I would recommend taking a look into AG if you haven't. The Silver Surfer is a nice tool to have under your belt. It's much quicker than grep or any of those. And of course, Copilot. Yeah. So Copilot is first-class citizen in Vim, or the other way around. Vim has first-class support for Copilot because GitHub decided, yes, we have many people using Vim, so we will provide an official plugin for that, and it works great. It's actively maintained. Pull requests don't get merged for some reason. They will just be abandoned, and then the code magically appears inside of the plugin. That's just a maintainer thing. But yeah, so if you have anything that's wrong with the Copilot plugin, just open a PR and the code will appear inside of Copilot later on. It's just a little bit weird. I don't know, it must be a license. No, it's a maintainer, it's a human, but there must be a licensing thing or I don't know, something. But yeah, it works really great and I'm using it a lot. You can even have like the multiple panes with multiple suggestions, filter through suggestions and all of that all works. So you don't have to forgo using AI in your development workflow. Also, after you have used Copilot, you will probably want to commit stuff and then blame other people. And this is also nice. You have all of the Git tools inside of Vim. This is the only command I'm actively using, the git blame. You could also do diffs. No, really, like I'm doing all of the other Git stuff not inside of Vim. But git blame, there I want to see who wrote what. But for committing, merging, merge requests or merge conflicts, I'm solving them in my very own way, where I'm looking into the console and see which files I need to open, and then I open them in Vim, and I see basically the raw Git output where you have like the diff, and you can decide what you want to do with it. But there are all of the tools which you are used to in IntelliJ or VS Code. Similar views exist for Vim, because Vim has been around for so long that like literally any problem you can think of as a developer has already been solved 20 times. And yeah, that's one of those. So this is basically leading into my use of CLI tools. I try to use the plugins where they provide me value. But I also don't like to have hidden stuff. That's one of the reasons why I prefer Vim over IntelliJ or VS Code, is that I know what happens when I click on a button because I don't have buttons. So yeah, it's really convenient. And for me, this looks like this. So in the top, I have my Vim window where I'm typing, and I have hot reload in Flutter like everybody else, because you can just specify a PID file and it just hot reloads as soon as that changes. That's also under the hood how the others work, right? But now I know about how it works and I can reuse it and build my own tooling around it. And on the right side, I'm using this window for Git commands or anything where I want to use a CLI using Firebase or anything. That's basically what I do in the right-hand side. You would have the same in VS Code or in IntelliJ. You have the terminals at the same places. And you can also, like, I'm using Kitty as a terminal emulator. I will talk a little bit more about that later. But you can arrange windows however you would like them to be, and it's really convenient. Like, yeah. Also, what we saw yesterday, now we could even run the Flutter app inside of the terminal, right? So I'm thinking about making a talk about that the next time. Right now, what we would have to do is turn down the text size to the absolute minimum, and then we couldn't read anything anymore. And because text size is global for the whole terminal, that wouldn't work as of today. But there is a terminal image protocol which allows us to display images inline in terminals, in modern terminals, which implement it. So that's probably one of the next talks. Let's see. On to my next lesson, which is using makefiles for pretty much anything you want to execute multiple times and which you are using in multiple locations. That is on the one hand side, running Flutter on multiple machines. You want to have the same run configuration on all machines. You can use VS Code launch configs. Also with Vim, there is a plugin using that. But I also like to have makefiles, because makefiles allow you to do the same in the pipeline. So now you have your pipeline steps predefined, and you can run them on your super powerful M1, M2, Mac Pro, Max, whatever. And it's much quicker than on the super cheap GitHub runner, which takes 5 to 10 minutes and blocks you until the pipeline goes green or red, and then you need to go back. So it's really nice to be able to run all of those commands on your local machine as well. And my makefiles look somewhat like this. So I also stole this idea from somebody else. But basically, you have a phony, which basically tells the makefile which commands we have registered. We have a default goal, and then we have all of those goals with descriptions, and the help basically takes the comment and displays that as description for the specific command, which is pretty nice. And this allows me to run tests like they would run on the CI. This allows me to share like really long launch configs. Like if you're using the very good CLI tool, you have super, super long launch sequences. And this simplifies it, for me at least, a lot. Also the PID file, which I need to specify for my config to work, I can also put that in there. Here it's still typed out explicitly, but I since then moved to having an environment variable so that everybody can have their own PID file configured and can just share the same run config. So yeah, makefiles for the world. I think this is really an amazing tool. If you're using monorepos and melos, you can achieve something very similar because there you also have your steps. But this is something everybody should use, in my opinion, regardless of if you're using Vim or whatever. Makefiles really make it much easier to have portable, reproducible steps. So on to the next lesson, which is terminals and multiplexers. So I went through a multitude of different terminal emulators. A terminal emulator is something like iTerm, Kitty, Alacrity, all of those. And eventually I settled on Kitty, and that's basically because Alacrity, which was my favorite at the time, didn't make the switch to the M1 Max because the maintainer is hardcore Linux, and he said he doesn't want to keep up with Apple doing new stuff. And then a bunch of people switched from Alacrity to all over, and I think we all converged on Kitty more or less because Kitty is pretty amazing in performance and everything else. And yeah, I already showed how this looks like, but what I want to point out here is I was using Tmux in the beginning to basically get the window layout, and Kitty has its built-in binary spacing partition or general window management, I would say. And I've been using that because Tmux, again, has problems with some control codes, so not everything gets displayed properly as Kitty could. Kitty is very graphic intensive or can display graphics very beautifully. As you see, like we have icons over here and stuff like that, like that's all pretty nice. And that didn't work that well when I was using Tmux in between. So I decided to switch from Tmux to using Kitty only. And also because I'm not really using the sessions feature of Tmux, that was working fine for me. Yeah, I would encourage you to use or to try out Kitty if you're currently using a different terminal emulator. I'm not sure if it's Mac only, but yeah, I think give it a try if you want to. It's really beautiful. Yeah, and I had to, of course, play around with the example from yesterday, and it's really easy. You can just check it out and run it, and it's super nice. And maybe in the end, if we have some time, I can show that, yeah, you have all of the movements like scrolling, tapping on stuff. That all works and gets intercepted by the terminal. But as you can see down there, this is text. And that's the text size, basically. Like, yeah. So not useful at the moment for really doing anything. It's meant as a novelty, but I think it could have some real use cases like having Obsidian Markdown in Vim instead of having that in an Electron app or stuff like that. So that's what I was like. I've been trying to implement the embedder like 3 times, and I'm just not good enough to do that. But now I have everything up to the draw method, and I think that's something I can figure out. So that's the next talk probably, is how to go from there to the next level. Debugging is the next thing which I get asked all the time. And yes, I do print debugging. Only. And I'm very fortunate that I'm only working in projects, or mostly working in projects where that works, because they are written in a way that they don't introduce like fancy problems. One of the people who's also using Vim recently told me that he is now running everything through a debugger. So there is a debug bridge, and you can set breakpoints, and you have all of the features if you want to have them. I just never bothered implementing that because I was so lucky that I could get away with print debugging. And also know your dev tools. Like, we have a debugger already available, and in the end, the debug bridge, which we would have in Vim, would also interface with that. Maybe have some sugar on top of it, like IntelliJ or VS Code probably has. But in the end, it will all end up basically being a bridge to this. And most of the things which you want to try out, you can just do here. So yeah, DevTools for the world. And also when I start Vim using the terminal, I can easily open the DevTools because I get a link. I can just click on the link. And yes, you can click on links in the terminal and they open in Chrome, which is nice. So even that is not an issue. Like, it's not cumbersome. You don't have to copy paste and open a new window. It's just very integrated today. So it's somehow evolved over the time. It didn't get stuck in the past. Like, terminal productivity today is still very viable and very productive. I'm not saying that it's more productive, just that it is not taking away productivity from you. And lastly, or one of the last lessons is, read the fucking manual, because any plugin, whether it's a Vim plugin, a VS Code, or an IntelliJ plugin, can do more than you're currently using. And it's probably some amazing functionality which you never knew you needed, but as soon as you see it, you cannot unsee it. And who of you has read the last release notes of your IDE which you are currently using? Okay, that's quite a lot of people. So I think it was like 10%, more than I thought. Like, because most people don't read the release notes of their IDEs or read or watch the announcement videos about new features and functionality, because most of the time we are using 1% of our tool and it's enough to get the work done. But we could do more. We could look into it and do more. But in the end, and that's the last lesson, it's okay if it just works. So, as I said in the beginning, I'm not an expert Vim user like other Vim users in the room probably are way better at Vim, at configuring, at building their own plugins. I'm not that person. For me, it works, and it works good enough that I can provide value to my clients and that I don't have friction in my development work. And also, I'm using Vim because it makes my work a little bit more exciting. And for me, that's very important. I don't want to get bored developing because I'm still pretty young, and I think I will be developing for a few more years. So for me, anything that can spice up my workday or make me feel like it's fun to do that, that's why I'm doing that. Not because it's more productive, because honestly, you will be as productive in any IDE. There is no difference in tooling. Like, anybody who tells you that they are more productive because of a certain tool, that's probably not true. Because in the end, you just need to know about your tooling. You need to know what your tooling is capable of. And for me, the reason is purely pleasure and being able to type on a keyboard without keycaps and stuff like that. So yeah, that's fun. And wrapping this up, lessons to take away today. If you wondered if Vim is a viable option, yes it is. Please go ahead and give it a try. Your IDE is as powerful as it needs to be. You can just stay there. There's no need to make the switch to Vim unless you want to just give it a try. Terminals are still cool, and they work, and they can do amazing stuff. And CLI tools are the way to go instead of clicking on fancy buttons. In German, we have the term clicky bunti, which means you have a UI where you can press buttons and you don't know what happens. So try using more CLI tools. It's amazing. You have more control over what happens. And I didn't ask for permission, but it's public, so I just pasted the link to where I store my dot files, because I was asked multiple times if I can share my dot files. And mine are messy. Mine are a fork of his. But yeah, and don't forget to star. So if you steal them, please leave a star. I put all of those slides into a bit.ly link, bit.ly/vim-flutter. As I said, I do coaching and training, and I help companies in the development workflow with various Flutter-related stuff. So if you want to reach out, please do. Again, the slides will be shared on my Twitter. So also you can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. So yeah.